post from the left. That is what boat race folklore dictates. It's very hard to say, though, who is navigating the better now, Tim Foster.
I think both Coxes have actually steered their boats very well. They're fighting well. I think Oxford are just pushing Cambridge that little bit wider, but the Cambridge Cox is holding his line pretty well. What you can't do too much is be too aggressive, because as a Cox, yes, you want to get the best line, but you have to let your crew row and settle down into a rhythm at this stage.
The next 3 minutes are absolutely crucial for Oxford. They've got to take full advantage of the bend in their favour. They've got to go foot to the floor to get ahead.
Now they are making the turn. They're turning potentially into new weather. Closest to the boats for us, James Cracknell. How's it feeling on the river, James?
It's livening up now as they've come through Hammersmith. As they come through Hammersmith, Oxford held their course very well and pushed Cambridge out of the stream. And it's just starting to chop up now. There's a lot of water flying about.
And you heard the mid-race surge of supportive noise, potentially to reinvigorate these 16 exhausted oarsmen through choppy waters.
I thought it was a very good move there by the Oxford Cox. He held his line very well, pushed Cambridge over, and then called a push and made his crew that are already probably screaming with effort and energy to push that bit harder, make the most. Okay, it's getting rougher, it's not going to get any better. They're making the most of their move now. Maybe Oxford are trying to win this race in the next 2 minutes.
The course is turning, the conditions are turning for the worse. Look at the spray there, and look at the water hitting the Oxford Cox here, Seb Pearce.
While they're in the run, kick them hard. Yeah! Now keep driving it on, boys. Driving it.
And the requirement from Seb Pearce there to attack them while they're in the rough. Keep Cambridge in the nasty water and make it as smooth for themselves as possible in the Oxford boat. It's become less now a challenge of rhythm and rate and speed and grace, and more a rugged exercise in the simpler, rudimentary requirements, staying afloat, staying together, just moving.
I do not like how it looks for Cambridge here. They've been in some rougher water than Oxford. When Oxford had a slight bit of shelter, they may be taking on some water, and I believe they have no pump today. They cannot get rid of any water they take on board.
Yes, Oxford have a pump on their boat that will try and get rid of any water that does come in. Because of the design of the Cambridge boat, they can't get rid of any water, and it isn't looking good for them at the moment. They are taking in water, and they're having to carry that weight down the course. Oxford are maybe moving a little bit cleaner through it, and Cambridge are struggling at the moment.
Horrid conditions. I spoke with Dan Topolsky, perhaps the oracle of boat race business this morning, and he said it will be a slugfest from this point. And so it is proving. The perception is that Cambridge are a boat with grace and Oxford are a boat with real growl, and the growl is working.
Cambridge Cox has made the decision to come in towards the Surrey station. They're now coming in behind the Oxford boat. Because Oxford have got a length distance, it's Cambridge have decided to come out the fastest stream and into the nicer water. He had to make that decision because his boat was starting to take on water.
It's starting to look very heavy in the Cambridge crew there. They may have taken on some water. Oxford overrating them by 2 beats, as you can see at the bottom of the screen.
Cambridge have spent most of the winter as most people's fancies. The favourites of the Riverside gossips have been Cambridge, but they didn't take into account the particular conditions that are flying into the face of these oarsmen on the big day, and Oxford have reacted to those conditions with guts. And they have a length advantage and possibly more.
Let's not forget it is hard for Oxford as well. We can see from the pictures there that they're crashing through the waves too. They're not getting such an easy ride. They're just coping with it a bit better than the Cambridge crew. It's not easy. They've been going for over 10 minutes now. So lungs are screaming, legs are burning. They need to keep on control of that boat, of their oars, and keep going at this rate.
6 months of raw training now being barged and buffeted by one afternoon of raw Mother Nature. And Oxford have dealt with it better to this point. What, Wayne Pullman, is Cambridge's way back?
They have to absolutely dig in and give it everything in the next minute or two. Oxford have a clear advantage. If they can't close the gap now, Oxford will be able to smell the finish line and they'll be straight off home.
Past the Chiswick steps, and that is a nasty boat to be in. The Cambridge Cox, Peter Rudge, will have a view of Oxford and will have a view that they are still catchable. But that is the umpire's view, and it tells a story. Oxford have battled through the mucky water, they've come through the mud, and they have established a lead which if not quite irretrievable, is getting close to that now. Only 13 times in the history of the race has the crew trailing at Chiswick Steps come back to win it.
The key point now for Cambridge, especially their cox Peter Rudge, is to keep his crew in this race. It isn't just about getting your nose in front, but the first marker for Cambridge is to get their bows level with the Oxford stern and make Oxford move over, because the Oxford bend is just about over now, and this last bend, if Cambridge can get themselves level with Oxford, will come in Cambridge's favour. So they need to make sure that they kick this next minute and a half hard and try and get back at least to vaguely level terms.
Cambridge haven't won it from behind at this stage since 1961. Oxford did it in 2002, again thrillingly in 2003.
It's starting to look a bit panicky in the Cambridge crew. You've got 5 men in that boat who lost last year, were absolutely determined not to lose it this year. There's people starting to look around, rhythm starting to break down. If they can't recover this soon, that's going to be over for them.
Down onto the river again, and James Cracknell. James.
Cambridge took in a lot of water in that bit down Chiswick. They're probably carrying probably 30 or 40 extra kilos than Oxford, and they're going to struggle now.
Into Corney Reach, up past Duke's Meadows. The bandstand will be upcoming soon on the Middlesex side. The huge Surrey bend has now unwound, and what advantage the course still has to offer is on the Middlesex side, theoretically with Cambridge, but that no longer is necessarily the case, Tim.
No, with Oxford so far ahead, they can come over and use the Cambridge station. So it is imperative that Cambridge do try and come back. But as James Cracknell says, Cambridge are carrying an extra 40 kilos of water in their boat, and they're going to have to pick that up every time they put the oars in the water. It's going to be tough.
It is a shame that the conditions have played such a role here. If you have one crew that's carrying an extra man in the boat in the form of water, it totally covers up.
Perhaps 5 minutes more to go. 5 minutes at the end of a life engulfing project to which they have devoted themselves since last September. 5 minutes remaining of an experience into which these boys have invested their lives, bodies and souls, for which they have made huge personal sacrifice in pursuit of grand personal glory. 5 minutes between all of that and all or nothing as we come up now to the key marker that is the bandstand on the Middlesex side. And what will that signify to those in the leading boat, Tim?
If you're in the Oxford boat at the moment, you'd be very happy to see that bandstand and the approach to Barnesbridge, because you know you're in the best position, you can see your opposition, you're probably not feeling so bad. Yes, you're tired, but the smell of victory is there for you if you want it.
Cambridge will start to know that the race is probably lost for them. Only Pete Rudge can see the Oxford crew. The Oxford are far enough ahead now that the Cambridge crew cannot even hear them, and they just have to believe that they can keep in the race.
Barnesbridge, according to the rules of the race, must be shot through its central span, and once they are through it, they have just 1,250 yards left to row. It is Oxford's to lose now.
Yes, I think we could talk about conditions, and yes, they have played a factor, but also we have to give credit to this Oxford crew, because yes, they made the best of those conditions, and as we heard Seb Pearce, the cox, saying, we're going to attack them in the rough stuff. A lot of crews would have been frightened of that rough water, but Oxford actually attacked in it and took advantage of it when it was there.
Yes, massive credit to this Oxford crew. We thought Cambridge had the faster start. Oxford put them under huge pressure in the first few minutes of the race, never let them get comfortable, and when the conditions were rough, it was Oxford that handled them better.
It is just awful to be in the trailing boat at this stage of the race. A stage of the race when everything that they have sacrificed to be in it may be flashing in front of their eyes, when the pain is in their hearts and in their bodies. 4 years ago at this point, Cambridge were half a second up and Oxford went on to win it. Every other race since the war has been won by the leader at Barnesbridge, and Cambridge haven't overtaken Oxford after this point since 1921. The water remains rough. Is it rough enough, though, James Cracknell, to alter the result?
No, it's probably going to make things even worse for Cambridge. Their boat's very low in the water, and they're clipping nearly every wave. Oxford are just rowing serenely off into the distance.
I spoke to Barney Williams just before he went out onto the river this afternoon, and his words were, prepare yourself for something special. And in fairness, Oxford, against the odds, the marginal odds, have indeed achieved something special through nasty white horses. Less a gliding boat, more a bucking bronco at times, but they have shown strength of character and strength of technique which has held up under this pressure.
Yes, it's not